Hello children, this is lesson 2 for literacy this week in year 4. I hope you're all doing all well and keeping safe. I'm just going to share my screen again so you can see what we're going to be talking about today. So, now, just before we do start, I just want to go over some of the things that I noticed yesterday in your work. There were children that were making really simple mistakes. Now, I don't know whether this is because you don't know where the apostrophe is on the keyboard or where the capital letter is. I'm sure if you speak to your parents, they'll be able to show you, but there were simple mistakes like Peter being spelt without a capital letter. Peter's I mean, the I belongs to Peter, so it should have an apostrophe to show that it belongs to him. And fronted adverbials, we've been talking about fronted adverbials since September in year 4. They should be punctuated with a comma. So one example that I had yesterday was high above the clouds. So that's enough of that. Well done to those of you that did complete the work. From what I saw, there were some fantastic examples. Just make sure that those silly mistakes today, you check your work just before you send it in on Purple Mash. So that leads us on to today's lesson. Today we're going to be looking at figurative language and how we can use that in our writing to bring the scene of Neverland to life. We're still concentrating on this picture and we're still going from Peter's perspective as well. So just a quick recap on figurative language. We have looked at this in year 4 in some detail again already, and we've tried to implement it in lots of different types of our writing this year. So let's just recap a metaphor. I've written a sentence using a metaphor about the skull, and all my examples are about the skull. So a metaphor is a phrase that describes something as something that it isn't. It's saying that it's something, or it was something, or they were something, or they are something. So when using a metaphor, you tend to use was, or were, or is, and are. And my example here is the skull cave was the entrance to hell. Now, it's not actually the entrance to hell, but you can see that whatever lies in there isn't going to be very pleasant. So it doesn't look like a pleasant object that's on the island. So I thought I would show this by using this negative metaphor. Similarly, I've stuck with that as well on the simile. A simile is a phrase that compares two things to show that they're like each other. So a metaphor is saying something is something else. A simile is saying it's like something. So when we write a simile, we tend to use as or like. And I've gone for like in my example. The skull cave looked like the gates of hell. So once again, using that imagery of it being hell. And once you enter, you are in hell. And finally, I've gone for personification. When we use personification, you can actually see the word person hidden in it. Sorry, that disappeared. You can see the word person in it. When you use personification, you're making an object, an animal, or an idea sound human by giving it human characteristics. So making it do something that it doesn't usually do. So I looked at the skull cave once again, and I decided that it looked like it was roaring ferociously. So I implemented that in my writing. The skull cave roared ferociously on the west side of the mountain. Nobody dared enter. Of course, the cave can't roar, but it's that negative imagery again. It's a place that you wouldn't really want to go. On second thought, I probably shouldn't have looked at the cave. I should have looked at something a bit happier. But anyway, I believe that the way that I've used personification, simile, and a metaphor, you would not want to go into this place. That's how powerful these techniques are in your writing. Okay, so let's go on and have a look at a few examples. So once again, like I said earlier on, children, I looked at the picture that we used yesterday for our writing. And yesterday, you were looking at prepositions. Now, if you want to include those today, that would be great again. So I looked at the ship to start, the pirate ship. And because I've done it on the computer here, obviously, if it was me doing some writing, I would have got a piece of paper, I'd have written pirate ship in the middle, and I'd have had a good look at it like I have on the screen. And anything that came to mind whilst I looked at this ship, I typed up and wrote round the picture. So it reminded me of an assassin, a killer, because obviously the pirates on it, they're after Peter Pan and they'd like nothing more than to catch hold of him. Concealed, it was hidden in the mist. So concealed is another word for hidden. A silent killer. The fact that it's coming through the mist and you can't see it coming, it's silent, makes it sound a bit eerie as well. It's a bit spooky. It's a ghost because you can't see it in the mist. It was shrouded, that means covered by the mist. And I've also put that it was stalking Peter. And then I actually thought of a better word, pursuing Peter, because that kind of gives me a little use of alliteration there. So I went for that one in the end. So after I thought of all these ideas, it's then time for me to create a sentence. Now, I'm going to write an example of a metaphor for this one, I think. So let's have a go. I know the smart notebook is there in the way again, so I am going to try and get it out of the way. It's a pain. Right, let's see. So we'll have Captain Hook's ship emerged from the mist. Emerged from the mist. Emerged is came out. Emerged from the mist. I'm going to say it was something by using a metaphor. So it was an assassin. It was like an assassin, because that would be a simile. It was an assassin. It was an assassin relentlessly pursuing Peter. And relentlessly means it's not giving up, and pursuing means it's chasing. It's after Peter. It's following him. So Captain Hook's ship emerged from the mist. It was an assassin relentlessly pursuing Peter. And there is the metaphor that I've used there. It was an assassin. I'm saying that it was an assassin, not that it was like an assassin. Of course, that would be perfectly acceptable as well. Okay, let's have a look at another example. So then I decided to look at the mountains. And when I looked at the mountains, I thought about it. The water, obviously, for the island, the fresh water anyway, because it's surrounded by salt water, but the fresh water from the island comes from this mountain. So everything grows because of the mountain. So I thought of it being like God, because it gives life. So I could use a metaphor for it. The mountain was God, providing the plants and animals with all of the water they needed. But I've just done an example of a metaphor. So I think this time I will, I'm going to use, because I thought it's like an iceberg. It did look like an iceberg when I looked at this part here, and I imagined the clouds were the sea. So it did look like an iceberg popping out. Here I saw a mouth, actually, a wicked grin. It looked like, or maybe even here there's a mouth. I don't know why it would have a wicked grin. It just looked quite wicked to me. Also, we could have out of the mouth spewing water, so spitting water out. That's quite, I imagine that would be quite funny if you could work that into a sentence. Mine's been quite negative, actually, at the moment. So I'm going to try and make it sound a bit more positive, this island that Peter Pan lives on. So I'm going to go for the mountain. The mountain, it looks like it's stretching up to the sky, so that there is some use of personification there, because mountains, as we know, don't actually stretch. The mountain stretched. Stretched up to the sky, to the heavens, the heavens. The mountain stretched up to the heavens. Now it's got a snowy peak. It's snowy peak. Looked like an iceberg emerging from the clouds. Looked like an iceberg. Looked like an iceberg emerging from the sea of clouds. Snowy peak. Yes, I'll go for that one. It's snowy peak. Looked like an iceberg emerging from. See, originally I was going to put from the clouds, but actually it reminds me of maybe waves. So it looked like an iceberg emerging from the sea of clouds. And for my reader, obviously they wouldn't have the picture in front of me. That gives them really strong imagery of what the top of the mountain looked like. They would know that it was covered in snow, and obviously it looks like an iceberg. Now, again, it would be quite easy to use a metaphor for that. I have got some personification in there because the mountain is stretching up to the heavens. So yes, quite happy with that one. Let's have a look at one more just before I set you off on your task. I then looked at the clouds. So even though I mentioned them prior to this, so when I looked at the clouds, they looked like a blanket. They were stretched out across the island. They looked like they were protecting the island as well. Obviously, clouds don't protect islands, but that would be a nice piece of personification to use. They cloak the island. It did remind me of sort of a cloak that the mountain was wearing. Adorned means decorated. I don't think that's probably the best one to use. And candy floss as well. I actually asked my partner for her example and she said candy floss, but I'm not going to use that one. The ideas that you write down at the start may not be the ones that you go with. You may think of a better one as you go along. There's nothing wrong with using any of those. I think for my personification example, I am going to go for, I've already used stretched, protect. I'm going to use the word protect. So, no, not stretching. I've already used stretching. Cloaking. Cloaking the mountain. Cloaking the mountain. Clouds. Clouds. The clouds protect you. Cloaking the mountain. The clouds protect you. Cloaking the mountain. The clouds protected the island. The clouds, they only revealed the island to those that it chose. Cloaking the mountain, the clouds protected the island. They only revealed the island to those that it chose. So that's saying that the clouds protect the island, they cloak it, they hide it away, and they only move out of the way for people that they want to see the island. So anyone that may be a threat to it, the clouds obviously come back and cloak the island again. Yeah. Obviously the clouds aren't cloaking it, they can't protect the island. They're clouds, it's water vapor, they can't do anything. But again, it makes them seem like they are a person. So that's a good use of personification. So I've given you some examples now, children. So I'm going to set you off on your task. Your task, which will be set as a to-do in purple mash again, is to write 2 examples of personification, 2 examples of metaphors and 2 examples of similes. You can use any part of the picture that you like. It is completely up to you. You don't have to use the things that I use. What I would say, though, is do exactly what I done. Think of what you're going to write about and then write your ideas around it. And that will make it easier for you to come up with an example of a metaphor, a personification example, and a simile. And finally, children, if you do want a challenge, you can try and write a paragraph yesterday. I know there was a girl in 4SB, I won't say her name, who managed to write a fantastic paragraph yesterday. She didn't stick to just sentences, and the paragraph flowed lovely. It was a great piece of writing. And if you can use the prepositions that we discussed in yesterday's lesson on Monday, that would be even better. So I'm going to leave you now. Once again, I look forward to reading your pieces of work. Goodbye all, and keep safe.